Hey everyone, and welcome back to A Spiritual Journey. This week I'm going to talk about 7 days of dedicated practice that I just came out of this morning, and a deep experience I had immediately on the first day and what I learned from it. I took some notes and I'll take you through those notes and how that affected the rest of my week. Hope you enjoy. So I just came out of a week of dedicated practice. For 7 days, I was simply focused on my spiritual journey. And my intention, and when I set aside this week a couple months ago, it was to really kind of go intensely into just simply focusing and meditating in silence all day, more of kind of like that masculine intense push. And what's interesting is over those last couple months, as I've been continuously doing work on myself, and a huge part of that work has continued to be on a deeper and deeper level, accepting that I don't necessarily need that. That the intense push, why am I doing that in the first place? And what hit me almost immediately, I was about a day and a half in, and what hit me was, if I feel like I need to really push myself to get to whatever this level is, then I'm essentially telling myself it's somewhere else. That it doesn't exist right here and now, that I'm not already that thing. And that really came in a strong way for me. And I realized that my actions, my habits are telling a lie, are telling myself that I'm not already there. And it was really powerful. It was a really powerful moment, and I allowed myself not to need to do some super intense, really restricted 7 days. And I kind of lightened up a bit, and Mel and I actually started talking instead of doing silence the whole time, and I brought in some writing and whatnot. And actually the first day it was really powerful, and I wanted to bring you into my writing and what I journaled. So if I look down, I'm actually looking at my notes, and I'm going to kind of bring you through a couple steps that came to me in this really deep and profound experience. But I wanted to start with that. I wanted to start with, my whole life I've always excelled and loved doing the challenge, moving to China and going to the ashram and meditating for 6 hours. And it's this really intense challenge that I'm going to overcome, and then it's going to get me closer to my goal. I'm recognizing on a really experiential and deep level how that's just it's putting the goal outside of myself. It's putting it somewhere else. And so I've really come into a place of the goal's here and now, the experience is here and now. And I need to believe that on an absolutely core essential level as I'm experiencing these deeper experiences that brought me to this journal. So to bring you into the experience, it was essentially, I was present. I was here and now. And I kind of saw my mind as this, I don't know, if you look at like the National Geographic, when they show kind of germs, and they're like these little spiky balls, and it kind of did that, and then it would stick to the side every once in a while and come off and stick to the side. Anyway, it was kind of, it brought up the sticky mind. Buddhism talks about sticky mind, and how essentially our likes and our dislikes are the things that stick. And so if I have preferences or aversions, those are my sticky points within the mind. And a lot of spiritual practices teach, all right, we need to unstick those. And it was, as I was working on that belief, and as I was just experiencing this beautiful experience of being present and seeing this mind and feeling separate from it, but also united with it, and just this immense peace that was there, this immense serenity. What came was, resisting that mind keeps me in a perpetual struggle, keeps me in a place of lack, in a place of I need to get there, and there would be unsticking the mind. So this is kind of what came up. And the term moksha in Sanskrit is essentially liberation, or better put, supreme liberation, which is that unification of soul with source, or liberation from the samsaric cycle. There's a few different things to think of. But what I'm going to use it as here is kind of liberation from the need to change the sticky mind, from the need, from the habits around that, from the beliefs around that. And so kind of I put 6 steps here. And step 1 was become aware that you're not your thoughts and you're not your emotions, which we're going to kind of put into just the mind for right now, unless you've seen number 2, or the second video. You're the awareness behind them. So, and I wouldn't say that you're just the awareness, you're all of them. But for now, it's separating from thinking I am my thoughts or my emotions, I am just those things. It's better to say I have those things. There's this separation. So I'm separate from this mind, this tool that I operate from. And that in itself is a really profound experience to have. And that's something that I've been experiencing and teaching for a while, is that, all right, we need to separate ourselves from that. But let's take that deeper. And step 2 is recognize that the mind has tendencies and preferences, likes and dislikes. And that's simply the nature of the mind. If I have those things, it doesn't mean that my mind is more stuck than your mind. It doesn't mean that I am a worse person than you are. It doesn't mean that I'm less evolved than you. It doesn't mean that you're closer to liberation or I'm closer to liberation if I have less sticks in my mind. That's the lie. That's a sticky point of the mind. That's what makes it actually sticky, is resistance to just the mind's natural tendencies of likes and dislikes. So from there, step 3 is allow the mind to be the mind while not being sucked into identifying with it. Can your mind have preferences, likes and dislikes, without you being completely identified with that? Now, something that I've noticed over time, and this both comes from working with the mind and the emotions and, mind, body and emotions, and not just the spiritual, is that there are certain things do unstick. There are the things that naturally unstick as time goes on, but also just allowing it to be, whatever sticks there are, allow it to be. And not to let that become a separator of where I am to where my goal is. And that's something that I've understood the intellectual kind of concept behind it, and consciously I've said, all right, I'm releasing. But there's also that huge iceberg below water, that subconscious mind, that takes a while to kind of bring some stuff out of. And so recognize that the mind and its activity have no effect on your divinity whatsoever. Now that's the key right there. And that's the thing that I had to shift into, which was, if I am this divine being and I'm whole, then having a sticky mind or not having a sticky mind doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't stand in the way at all. That great gate, like we talk about Yokadashi, great gate's wide open and no one's obstructing it. The only obstruction is my belief that there is an obstruction. And so letting go of that, in this place, in this experience that I had, the deep sense of serenity and peace was just watching Harry, the identity of Harry as the mind and the emotions, still get stuck to things, and just being completely content regardless, completely at ease, knowing that my divine nature is never affected by it. And so some things unstuck, some things stayed stuck. It was just this kind of beautiful experience. And step 5 is there is a great perfection. We talked about this in the last video. There's this great perfection or source that is within all things. And no matter what the mind does, that perfection is never tainted or tarnished. So if you do something, if you're mean to a person, or you do a specific habit like eating too much cake all the time, whatever it is that you judge, that you label as bad, and I should not do this, then does that make you less divine? And that's something, as time's gone on, I've gotten better and better about, is that literally, like, it's okay. It's okay if I have a foolish side of me. It's okay if I have this non-perfect part of myself, because it affects my divinity or the great perfection. So if soul and source, it affects neither my soul nor source at all. At all. Now, there is a larger conversation to be had there about ethics and morals and not causing suffering to others. I'm not talking about, causing suffering to others, but something pretty much essentially causing suffering to myself through self-judgment and letting that go. So recognizing, look, no matter how many times I trip up, my divinity is the same. My divinity is the same. And there's a quote at the ashram that I absolutely love, which is, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. And it's essentially, we all have the other side of ourselves. We all have the light and the shadow. And it's not about getting rid of the shadow. It's about integrating them. It's the yin and yang. And that's what I was really seeing is I was essentially sitting in my divinity watching this, what I usually struggled against, or what I usually just try to observe, get stuck. And then I would practice releasing. I just let it be stuck. It's okay. And I was still in that divine contentment. It was beautiful. And then the last one, this one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to read it. Liberation is holding a divine contentment, knowing that you are connected to the great perfection that is within all things. I'm going to say that again. Liberation is holding a divine contentment, knowing that you are connected to the great perfection that is within all things. And from this place, you experience the mind being the mind. If there are strong emotional experiences, you experience them. The goal is not to tame the mind into contentment. It's rather to be content no matter what the mind is doing. Therefore, nothing that it does can stand in your way to liberation, because you are liberated from identification with the mind. It's kind of like a dog chasing its tail. Just let it chase its tail. It's okay. Am I resistant to what is or not? It comes back to resistance. And what I've seen is the less I resist, the sticky mind unsticks itself here and there. But if it doesn't, that's okay. Don't have the expectation of it will unstick if I let it be. That is creating a resistance to it not unsticking. And I think that's what I finally let go of. I let go of eventually it will. Well, eventually I'll be this perfected being. I already am. The divinity is already within me. The great perfection already exists, even though my foolish side exists, quote unquote. And so it's letting go of waiting, letting go of expectation, letting go of preference, letting go of everything, letting go of the need for anything to be exactly as it is. Not to try to beget something, not to try to change what I am right now. That's something that I did for so long was, all right, I'm going to become extremely present through my breath, accept what is, release what isn't, release trying to change things. But then I would eventually get back into, because this is going to lead me to here, instead of just fully realizing that I do this to experience what is, and the great perfection is the isness. Source is the isness. And as long as I'm stuck in trying to change something, trying to get rid of stress and anxiety, trying to change my circumstances, I am in a state of resistance to what is. Now, certain things, I'm not talking about every single thing in the world. Certain things, it's probably best to change them. I'm talking about in our spiritual lives, in that expansive state, getting to that expansive state. Getting to that is essentially, you let go of that even, and just recognizing it's already here. It's already here. I just relax into it and allow it to be what it is instead of expecting it to be something else. So that has really been my profound takeaway from this week. I sat in beautiful places immediately, and I sat in some uncomfortable places as time went on. Did some silence. Most of it honestly was not in silence, and it was different. It was different than I thought it was going to be, but that's okay. I, in the past, have done this for even a longer period of time, all in silence, and I was so stuck on the way it should look, on what I should do during it, that it became a resistance to just letting it be something that was a natural flow and at ease. So I let go of that, and like I said, challenges still arose, but I allowed them to be and found my contentment within that. It's always fun to be on the spiritual path. Always a beautiful journey towards understanding and knowledge and the self, and being the self, the true self, the full self, and awakening to that along the way. And it's something that, as I'm in this place of recognizing this from experience, it doesn't mean that I've reached this completely expanded state 24/7. Still ebbs and flows, still comes and goes. But there's no resistance to the ebb and flow. There's no need for it to be any way but it is. And there's a complete trust that I know the great perfection exists. I am that great perfection. I've experienced that great perfection multiple times. And so it's from there, it's just living in contentment of that, and recognizing that the only time I can experience that is here and now, so not putting it off to the future, just being content in my divinity right now. Beautiful week. It's a beautiful week. Hopefully you identify with some of that, or you don't identify with some of that, but you understand kind of intuitively. And if not, feel free to ask questions about it in the stuff below, and I hope you enjoyed. So I will see you next week on A Spiritual Journey.